Hi there, traders. This is Brad Gilbert with the FX Market Insight for Tuesday, the 30th of July. All right, now a bit of an early update, just at the very start of the Asian session. Now, the core parts of what's going on now, there's been no major changes to the overall analysis. If anything, the US dollar weekly trend has just broken higher on the US dollar index. It hasn't really done much for the other pairs, and that little slight blip up on the dollar index is probably more around the big move down in sterling, right? None of the other pairs have moved. Sterling looks like the chances of a no Brexit deal have intensified, and that's really put huge pressure on the downside in sterling. So if I just give you a look at the charts, I mean, it's outside of sterling. Obviously, this is the pair that sort of dropped down. I was just sitting around or just under this trend line yesterday, and you're thinking, well, it's just going to go. It's a Monday, not great liquidity. I mean, it's just that, well, there's no momentum, from last week. We know there's all this Brexit stuff going on. Then all of a sudden, it just drops off the face of the earth, right? The rest of the pairs, pretty flat, right? So the Aussie yesterday just trading sideways, as was Kiwi. Dollar yen just poking its head up a little bit. Euro sideways, if anything, sort of just breaking out of this short-term downtrend. I mean, this is only a very weak resistance trend line, but you know what? Back up to 111.50, 60, it's going to squeeze a lot of shorts out ahead of the Fed. And dollar CAD just cruising sideways with oils back up a buck, But basically not much has happened except for this solid move down in sterling. Now, this is a seriously big move, 150, 60 points. That's a big move on a day, okay, just out of a geopolitical event. So when we come back to look at what's going on now with the analysis, right? This is okay. So the ducks are all lining up. Okay, what we need is the central bank sentiment, and particularly the Fed, and this will light up the screens very quickly. So when we are looking at the overall opportunities at the moment, the market's waiting for the core market event. Right now, today we have a couple of US numbers coming out. So they're sort of second-tier numbers, but they are still important, especially the PCE price index, a good inflation number. Consumer confidence is there as well. Now, the market is waiting for Wednesday's Fed announcement. Now, will the currencies move ahead of that? Well, maybe, and it'll probably come from the US numbers. If these numbers are already strong, well, then it's really going to give the market some focus with regards what they're going to expect out of the Fed on Wednesday. If the US numbers are strong, they'll cut rates, and they will be probably hawkish in their statement because all the numbers have quickly turned around to be very strong. So just be aware of that, and that's what a lot of the news services are focusing on as far as the sort of news goes here. Okay, you're looking at sort of the numbers. A Fed interest rate cut is in the bag. What then, right? This is what the market's talking about. They're talking about the statement. What are they going to issue after this? They definitely can't be looking to cut rates, because if they cut rates again, inflation's going to go through the roof because all the economic numbers are coming out really strong, right? So that's what we have to look for. Obviously, on the news there as well, Brexit is the next big story. Once again, it's a geopolitical event, so it's very hard to trade around because we don't have a starting point or an end point for that matter. Where the US numbers or the numbers and the central banks, they are much more structured. So today's market conditions, for me, it's a bit more of a wait and see. Okay, obviously outside of sterling, the rest of the pairs that would make sense. Wait and see there. Core market drivers, well, these two events have been a thorn in our side for so long, particularly Brexit. Now, this is the one thing that is driving sterling. Now, would you get short here, get long? And I can't tell you exactly what's going on with sterling. I can tell you, technically, it's broken down on all time frames and it is moving lower. The catalyst for the move is a geopolitical event. You can't really see it. You don't know when it starts, when it finishes, so it's pretty hard to get into that trade. If you are trading sterling, I'd suggest a very small position and a very big stop loss to give you some room to manage the initial volatility. It's come 160 points down in one day. That's usually enough to stop it. Right? I can't see too much downside from here unless until tomorrow, it could go again. But you know what? On a normal day, 150-point range covers the majors. China, well, that's on the back burner, this China-US trade issue, until the Fed's out of the way, I would suggest. So today, focusing on the sort of some of the major events coming out, the Aussie dollar could do with a bit of a directional number. Building approvals, this is traditionally a tier 3, a tier 4 number, doesn't really impact, but the housing market is an issue, so it does have a possibility to come into play. But for me, the major events today are going to be the North American session, and they are going to be these two releases. Okay, they're an hour and a half apart, which works out really well. You get 2 cracks of the cherry, and what I'm looking for, those to go with the current direction. And then you're just coming back to your charts and trying to find the best entry levels with that technical setup. It's a little bit tricky at the moment, and the market, the anticipation is starting to build very quickly around the Fed's meeting on Wednesday. We've got a few good numbers to get through, and I think tomorrow is shaping up. If you're not sure about what to do today, we'll have a look at the releases coming out tomorrow. It's quite epic, starting with the Chinese CPI numbers, Aussie CPI, Chinese manufacturing, Aussie CPI, Eurozone CPI flash estimate, Canadian GDP, and then the Fed, right? It's a huge day. All right, guys, that's it from me. Have a good trade day. Plenty to look at, plenty to anticipate. All right, guys, have a good day. Cheerio.